here again, but this time I have someone with me because last week, Joe, I had to speak to myself for.
Nice.
I mean, you know me, I don't find it hard. And actually, I had a very good conversation with myself. It was immense. Anyway, so this is Joe. Joe is part of the team. Joe is our engagement lead.
Yes, I am.
Engagement lead. I don't know. Joe just does stuff. I don't pay attention. But basically, I thought we should widen this out to the broader team. And you were mentioned in the last post because you went with Kaylin to Learning in Harmony Trust
Yes, indeed. So that's Thursday, exactly.
and got to witness the glittery suit presentation and
Indeed.
a certain incident with lasagna, which we probably shouldn't talk about for legal reasons.
Lots of lasagna chat.
Lots of lasagna chat and a little bit of flirtation. So what we're going to do today is we were meant to talk about Ofsted again, and I promised at the end of the last one that we'd definitely do Ofsted in this one, but I don't really want to. Don't want to talk. They get too much airtime. Do you know what I mean?
Fair.
They're likely to come up because what I'm interested in is why people come to you. You know, when they're making the initial, I'm interested in this.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first thing that comes to mind that they tend to say?
Lots of it is about learning more about the framework, the accreditation, the process. In that, once we delve into that, it's often about quite a number of things because it often goes in little kind of tangents, I guess, but often about a framework to hang what they're doing on is really helpful.
So the framework being our 5 drivers.
Yes.
And the 5 initiatives under each driver.
And the 500 measures, exactly.
So they like that because it just gives them a steer of what to do.
Yeah, I think so. It gives them something to pin what they're doing on. So a kind of board to kind of pin that on, I guess. It gives them the opportunity to have that cohesion, work out what they're doing, how they're doing it, bringing it together, and finding out what they're doing sometimes, because often it might not be all in, like we know, it's not all in one place. So it's kind of an opportunity to bring that together, and be able to kind of tick off what they're doing well, I guess. So sometimes it's about celebrating the success of what they're doing well and being aware of what they're doing particularly well, particularly around those 5 drivers and what that looks like when we've used the accreditation tool, and celebrating that success. And sometimes it's about identifying where focus needs to be applied, so where that might.
So do a lot come just for the marketing then? Because we can be just a marketing tool, right? We can be a banner on a gate saying we're nice to parents, please choose us. Do we get a lot of that? Or
I think there is some of that, and I think there is. Everyone loves a badge. Everyone loves to be told they're good, or silver or gold, etc. But I also think for many schools it's wider than that. So it's often about that the process itself. So identifying what they're doing well and making sure and having that legacy of that experience as well. So using the tool, the accreditation, to leverage what they're doing and then make it better and improve it.
I get that when they come to me in service. So I get the whole we're only half an hour away from needing a star chart thing, where
Yes.
you need to celebrate all the things you're doing well. Please give me something to stick on. I need a sticker.
Exactly.
So you get a little bit of that and a little bit of the competitiveness to go from standard to silver to gold. There's a definite increasing desire to be the first school to get gold, which is quite funny to watch because I think there's about 9 schools in the race.
Yes.
First school to get gold. and I'm just like, yeah, you go for it. But then it's the other side of it is when they go through the accreditation process and answer all the questions, they get an action plan at the other end, and it's that it can be a little overwhelming because it gives them a lot to do. But then they get to form a strategy on the back of that. So it's the same thing. But I just wonder, is there also a thing that they come, so if it's not just marketing and they want to know how to do it, because parent participation is hard and no one knows how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to have a list of instructions. Do they give you a big old inside, this is how hard it is and this is why we have to do it, and give you a bit of a story of the school? Because I think it's really nice for people to hear that, because
sometimes like a history of the background of what's gone on, and sometimes that can be positive. We've had some great success, or we've gone from this point which has been pretty negative to this point which is now really positive, and we want to kind of continue in that pattern. Sometimes it is all just negative, and actually they're like, do you know what, whilst we're sitting here with that box open, we might as well carry on and continue and get some improvement there. So I think also often, and I've had that a couple of times this week, where I've kind of worked with people and they're saying actually it was really useful to kind of just say that to someone, my experience. And
I need to shed myself of the trauma.
Yeah, I felt like it was free therapy, for want of a better expression, but it was kind of like just being able to offload that and talk about that, and then also being able to convert that into our conversation and how that might work, or how that might change their journey, or how that might strengthen their journey. I think there was a couple of schools this week that I'd say that resonated with. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of things, but yeah, certainly being able to, for me, it's gaining that context about the school, because then that shapes the conversation we're going to have, that shapes what we might talk about in terms of how their accreditation might look, the pace of that, what other products might be useful for them, because it might not be that a particular product's a good fit, or it might not be going from standard to gold in 1 year is a good fit for a school, and it depends where they start, doesn't it?
If you're coming from a position where your parents are quite negative and you're trying to, and let's be clear on this, I've heard a lot across the country of a negativity of parents towards education, and I don't think it's just to education. I think there's a general negativity to life. It's life generally. And it's manifesting in a little bit of conflict with schools. And I've heard some shocking stories of head teachers having their ribs broken, even because of incidents. But the first thing is nice for everyone to hear, is it's probably not just them, and if they think it is their parents, and but their parents aren't that bad, then it's like, oh, all right, just a bit.
Could be worse.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But if they are that negative, there's no point in buying standard to gold, because it's too big a journey in too short a time. So absolutely. What if I was to come to you and said, look, every time we have an interaction with a parent, all they say to us is negative stuff. We can't get them to tell us in a positive way what they want. We hold parent forums, no one shows up, blah blah blah. The common thing where you think you're doing the right thing, and then 3 people who always turn up. What would be your support there?
I think the point is with that is to do that initial accreditation, see where you're at as a school, where you come out, for standard, for example, have a look at the actions that might result as the outcome of that. Obviously their consultation with the service team, so the associate that they would get as part of that process, and then move on from there, because I think until really you know where that school's at, it's really hard to move them forwards. I think where you've got a school, on the contrary to that, where you've got a school that's saying, look, we're doing loads of stuff really, really well, you might look at them and they're saying, our ambition is to get to silver gold. That might be a very different journey and a much quicker journey. But I think where a school is quite, honestly from the get-go saying, actually, do you know what, this is a real challenge for us, and that we can see that there's a lot of improvement needed. I think for me, it would be look at that standard accreditation, perhaps look at something around parent listening. Are there other things that we could do to help consult with that parent audience?
That's interesting, because then what you're essentially saying is, with the accreditation on parent listening, what you get is almost like a wraparound research project of your parents, don't you? So you do your self-evaluation, and you get what I call the scores on the doors. You basically get a scoring breakdown of where your strengths and weaknesses are, which is nice, and it's always good to have quantitative measurement like that.
Yeah.
But bringing in somebody in from a charity like we are and saying, talk to them and tell them what the issue is, and then all that attack defense dissolves, but you get nice qualitative research. like real tangible comments about. And the question we always ask is, what does your school need to hear? Not what does your school need to do, because that's always received defensively, but what does your school need to hear from you? And then it's such a nice way of packaging that with the accreditation to then get them to hear that.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of have then got, ways. So you've got your benchmarking, you know what you're currently doing and how that's working and how you can improve, but then specifically for that parent audience what is going to engage them. So some of what we talk about is the barriers to schools and for parents in terms of parent participation often is not feeling like they're being listened to. If you've got a parent listening product, you've got a parent listening experience, then that's exactly what that's meant to be about, and therefore they've got a platform and they've got an opportunity and a time for it to be solely about them as well. So I think using that in conjunction with the accreditation means that you've got that rich, like you said, data that you can use to shape exactly what you're doing. I've even spoken to a school that really wanted to have the parents involved in the accreditation process. Like, what does that look like?
I have actually had that. I mean, we do parent language, which you can talk about in a minute, which rarely involves a parent. But I did a silver award assessment with a school, and they brought the parent governor along. Right, and the parent governor gave her answer to the questions as well as they did. Do you know what? It really made their silver award super powerful. They just breezed it because she was able to give real insight.
Yeah. And I think if you're talking, it's kind of obvious in a way, but if you're talking about involving parents and parent participation, and then you're doing something that doesn't involve them, in a way, it's obviously, and it's going to work better, and it's going to be better received if they've got an input and a stake. I think that's the thing as well, because it's much easier then to roll something out where people, and specifically parents in this instance, have been consulted, because therefore they've been part of that journey, they're fed into it. It really helps with that whole point around feeling listened to, because they've been specifically listened to yet again, and all of that is weaved into kind of the outcome and the action plan of that.
Yeah, you have to close if you do a listening exercise, or you do a survey like parenting language, if you're going to have that impact, you have to close the feedback loop. So you have to say, you said we did. You can't just go, all right, thanks, we listened. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, people just feel devalued and won't do it the next time. Really. But we don't ask for parent validation of the accreditation until gold. And we do that for a reason, really, because we want the first stage to be self-reflection. Because we talked about this being a badging process, and we could be quite cynical and just say we're in it to spread parent kind banners all over the country.
Yeah.
But we're really not. We're in it in order so that schools get on better with parents.
Yeah, exactly.
So they have to go on an improvement journey. So for us, the process is probably more important than the outcome. So answering those questions is a really powerful learning experience for most schools. Brilliant. Already supported and improved. Silver is all about telling stories about your school and reflecting really deeply when you're telling your stories. It's only at gold where we visit the school and then we speak to parents, because we will not give our gold award out without validation of parents.
Yeah.
But the challenge I give to schools is, should you be listening to your parents before you get there? Should you be involving them in the process before you get there? And obviously, parenting language and parent listening is the way.
I think absolutely should be. And I guess it depends, like, to the degree. If, like, in that early stage, perhaps it is just a little bit more consultative, and that kind of then upscales depending on the award that you're doing and the depth that you're getting into with it, because there's a lot of stuff that schools will need to improve to even get to standard, or higher than the 40% anyway. But after that point, and you're looking at kind of testing some of that stuff and seeing if it works for that school, I think there's a lot around, like, how do we evolve it as well.
I mean, it's interesting about the fact that some people don't get to the 40% that gets the standard award accreditation, which is a real eye-opener for some. Yeah. So let's just dwell on that a little bit, because people will be like, you can fail it. And yes.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. because otherwise it wouldn't be a credible accreditation. But I can tell you for one thing that there's two things that always missing on our below standard schools. One is a strategy. They don't have a strategy. And if you think about it, you can't manage a relationship with any stakeholder if you don't have a strategy. Otherwise, it's just happening by accident. And the other thing is they don't have a leader of it, so no one's accountable for it, so no one bothers about it. So if you're thinking about it and going through it, but worried that you might be below standard, it's those two things that you put in place first and share across the school, and then you should be all right.
Yeah, I think there's also, I get questions often from schools around, like you said, about the threshold for pass. But something like they might look at the drivers and say, oh, actually, do you know what? We don't do a lot around parent volunteers because of, maybe it's a lot of reasons, obviously, but maybe sometimes it's around the cohort of young person. And actually, if it's a alternative provision or something different, that might be more of a challenge than it is in a kind of mainstream provision. But they will ask, does that mean we'll fail? And it's like, well, not necessarily, because it's 40% as a percentage of the overall questions, but obviously moving forwards to silver and gold, not having a whole driver is a lot.
It's a sort of best fit. So you can be, and let's face it, most schools are below standard for driver 4.
Yeah.
I think the benchmark is something like 29%, which is below standard nationally, because people take the idea of volunteer to a degree that we probably don't mean. So but most people think of a volunteer as somebody that's inside the school doing work for free.
Yeah.
Which, like you say, for an alternative provision setting is actually impossible. That it would unsettle the kids. So that's not necessarily, and it's actually really difficult for a standard mainstream school because of safeguarding, because of that's especially in secondary school, the teenagers don't want them there. And since COVID, we're all antisocial, so we don't want to be in person. So it's a really high bar if that's what we mean. But what we could mean is, are your parents involved in teacher interviews?
Yeah.
Are your parents on your register of work experience companies? Are your parents invited in every so often to help you decide on a policy? All of those things are volunteering. Even being somebody that organises the school WhatsApp group is a volunteer.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So people get carried away with driver 4 and what involvement in school life means, but it's not usually.
It's more than that. And I think that's the thing. It's like, also what I also say is that obviously we've got loads of toolkits, resources, they have a call as part of the accreditation with you, and there's always ways that you can draw out some of that learning that you've had, and experience with different schools, and what might count as volunteering and how can they make that better, or whatever it might be. Yeah, because at primary age, going in and reading with a group of young children is obviously, easier, and something that is more accepted and kind of embedded in kind of that stage of schooling. But yeah, I think it is more of a challenge, especially when you kind of look at the makeup of schools as well. But yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the other thing to say about AP Send and your social, emotional, and mental health schools is that they also benefit from having much more stringent legislation around some of the things that other schools can choose to do.
Yes.
So a lot of their signposting has to be a lot more vigorous. So they tend to do a lot more in driver 5.
Yeah.
They tend to have a lot more organisations in their circle for driver 5. Equally, driver 2, it's mandatory that they have a meeting to co-design the learning for the child every year. So there are twos and fros with the accreditation where each setting gets, a benefit somewhere where another doesn't. This has been immense.
Awesome.
We've just spoken for 20 minutes about that. One last question, Jo. Has the O word cropped up in your conversations with schools yet?
Yes, definitely. The O word is there. It's always there. I think often it might be even me initially that introduces it purely from a kind of knowing that that is one of the real takeaways as well, that references to parent participation have obviously increased massively. So that awareness of that, and just knowing that that has to be embedded fully in their school development plans, I think that is helpful. And just the fact that it just can be a real asset, what we're doing is a real asset to that journey, and I think that that is just really helpful. So just knowing that going through that process, having an audit of what you're currently doing, is only going to better prepare you for that inspection and better kind of get you ahead. So
I had that conversation with someone who's in the window. Now, you won't have experienced the window. It's terrifying. It's enough to gurgle your belly. Let's put it that way. But she said that because she did the standard and then the silver quite quickly afterwards, and she really pointed out, one, that she'd gathered evidence because she'd done the process, but also she'd sort of like clarified her thoughts because she was forced to doing the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so she doesn't now fear the bit where she has to speak to the inspectors about it, because she's got it, on at the front of her forehead, ready to go. So yeah, we mentioned it. I didn't break my promise, Joe. I just did that so I didn't break my promise. We talked about it.
That's it.
Right. Thanks, Joe. I very much appreciate you being here.
You've had
your first time.
First timer.
Your first time. No more. Next time you will be a seasoned
a seasoned professional in the vlog.
Have a really good afternoon. See you later.